I'm going to share my screen. And we're just going to present like this. Okay, thanks everybody for coming. If you make sure your microphone is off just now, and switch it back on when we're having any interactions. Thanks for coming along to Islay's incredible seagrass. Before I begin, I just want to say thanks very much to the Botanist Foundation for funding our work and making it all possible, and for also offering to host the in-person event at the distillery. It's a real shame that we didn't be able to take advantage of the nibbles on offers and get to meet you all in person. We were camping at Fortmore campsite last week, and snorkeling in water every day. And as you know, the weather was pretty wild. So we were kind of forced to kind of halt it at the weekend and go and get some respite. But thank you very much for joining us online. So to introduce us, the team, we have today Dr. Esther Thompson with us. Esther is the Senior Scientific Officer for Project Seagrass. She has been working in seagrass science for 13 years, specialising in nutrients. Esther is joining here to answer questions in the chat, so please do use the chat function for any questions as we're going through, and we'll do our best to answer them. We're going to have 3 presentations. I'm going to start with a little bit of a Seagrass 101. So really back to the basics of why we work with seagrass and the benefits it provides for us. We'll have a quick break, and then Pierre, who is a master's student at Edinburgh University, is going to share with you the biodiversity surveys he's been doing on Island. And then Peter, who has been working, this is the second year he's been working on Islay, so he's going to share with you the local knowledge that he's built up, so about mapping Islay's meadows. So we'll get started. So a quick background on who Project Seagrass are. We're a charity. We are based in South Wales, and we celebrated our 10th birthday last year. We're a big team, well, a relatively big team, but in Scotland it's just myself and Esther, who are connected to a larger team of researchers and fieldwork team down south. And we've got projects at the moment in the Solent, so that's the Isle of Wight, in Essex, in North Wales and in South Wales. And we are very much scientific based and research focused. And we have 3 pillars that we work under, which is community, research and action. So very quickly to go through them. Pillar 1, community. Seagrass science is very novel. We're learning all the time more collectively about the science. So it's important to knowledge share to make sure that we're not repeating learnings. So we like to collaborate with lots of local partners and try to deliver seagrass training and aiming to support and enable local stewardship. Pillar 2 is our research. So Project Seagrass was born from Swansea University, and we lead and support scientific research throughout the UK on seagrass science. We write up these learnings in scientific publications and reports, and we work closely with different universities in the UK and abroad. So yeah, our lead scientist is Dr. Richard Unsworth, and he teaches marine biology at Swansea Uni. And the third pillar is action. So we aim to put all those learnings and connections into positive actions for the marine environment and the people and nature that live in them. So we work with regulatory bodies and governments to provide protection, support through citizen science, and develop and trial restorations. So first of all, what is seagrass? One of the biggest misconceptions is it's not an algae. Seagrass is the only true marine flowering plant, so an angiosperm that lives in the ocean. Much like terrestrial plants, it photosynthesizes, so it uses the sun's rays to produce energy, and it's a primary producer in the ocean. It's biology that makes it special. Algae, so things like seaweed and kelps, they've got holdfasts that hold on to rocks or marine structures, holds them in place, whereas seagrass has got roots, and these roots go into the sediment and hold the plant in place in that way. It's got these horizontal rhizomes, which you can see from the picture, which kind of grow roughly about 10 centimeters underneath the substrate, and that holds the plant in place. And it's got flowers and seeds. It reproduces in 2 ways. So it reproduces both sexually and asexually. Those thick rhizomes have shoots coming off them, so it produces colonially much the same way spider plants do. But it also has flowers and seeds, so it produces sexually through seed dispersal as well. This little picture up on the right is some pictures of some of the flowers. And then the picture in the bottom, you can see the different stages of the reproduction on shoots. Worth saying this is mariner. Not all seagrass is the same. So where do we find seagrass? So there's 72 species globally. We find them in every continent apart from Antarctica. Seagrass like clear, shallow waters because they photosynthesize. So the clearer the water, the deeper it can survive, generally speaking. It's not a big fan of wave action, so it likes sheltered bays. It's important to say that out of these 72 species, they're not all created equal. So there's lots of generalizations being said here. And all these different species do behave, have different characteristics and behave in different ways. It's quite an important thing to remember when you're reading facts about seagrass, because you can't, often they'll be talking about one species which maybe doesn't apply to your local one. Generally, they're found under 10 meters, most commonly in 4 meters to intertidal. So in Islay,
Yeah. So let's go with
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize. That's my mistake.
That's my first choice.
I'll carry on. So in Islay, the seagrass distribution, this map is point data which has been put up by citizen science in Islay. So we'll talk a little bit more about Seagrass Spotters, a Project Seagrass citizen science app. But this shows you different points where we found seagrass on Islay historically. You can see it's in the shallow sheltered areas. Peter is going to go into much more detail with this with his presentation. So in the UK, we've got two species, Zoster nulti, which is dwarf eelgrass, and Zoster mariner. So I'm going to go through both of them briefly. So Zoster nulti, as the name suggests, dwarf eelgrass is the smaller of the two species. It's thinner as well in the leaves and much smaller. And as we discovered, the team, it's very hard to distinguish sometimes between the two species when they are growing about the same size. But generally speaking, nulti is found in intertidal mudflats and in that intertidal zone where the sea comes in and out. So it is a small species, but it is mighty. As it's being exposed to the elements, it's pretty resilient. So it's got finer, thinner leaves, and the reproductive elements, so the seeds are found at the bottom of the leaves in the just above the roots. So they don't have separate reproductive shoots. And then we have mariner or marina. And this is known as eelgrass. And this is the more commonly known species. And this most commonly found subtidally. So this is where you get these beautiful extensive meadows that you can see in the bottom picture here. They can grow in the intertidal, but they do kind of tend to look a bit more like nulti. So they kind of grow slightly differently. These guys have got separate reproductive shoots. So you can see them sticking, they're slightly woody, slightly yellowy color. You can see them sticking up when they're taller in the meadow. So they grow, the seeds are growing on separate shoots rather than the way that they do on the nulti. We have a lot of this on the west coast of Scotland and especially up and around Orkney. So why do we care so much about seagrass? What's the big deal? Well, it does a lot for the marine environment and therefore a lot for us too. We can say a lot for people and planet, and we can call these ecosystem services. So it's the benefits that the seagrass meadows and these ecosystems provide for the surrounding environment. So we're talking about rhizomes earlier. So these kind of thick, starchy rhizomes that grow horizontally to the substrate. And they can form this interlocking mat, so they can all cross over each other. So you can imagine how that stabilizes the sediment, how it holds it together, especially over large areas. And often seagrass grows in different substrates, many different ones, but quite often it could be in very sandy ones that would be easily moved about. This article from The Guardian is a meadow from the east coast of Australia in a place called Shark Bay. And it's a species called Posidonia australis. And researchers found this meadow and mapped it, and it was 200 kilometers squared wide, large. So to give you an idea, put that into sort of something imaginable, it's about 20,000 football fields is how big it was. The researchers did 18,000 genetic marks on it and sampled it, and it was one plant. So this full meadow of 20,000 football fields was one plant. They've estimated, it's quite hard to age it, but they've estimated it through various sort of experiments that it's about 4,500 years old. So it was coined the biggest plant known on Earth. So absolutely huge. And I think this indicates sort of it's a good example of the colonial growth of seagrass, but also one thing, when we do a lot of presentations and go to a lot of different sort of summits and things, everyone wants to talk about carbon and the carbon benefits that seagrass has. And the true carbon benefit is what it locks in the sediment. So if you imagine that meadow's been there for 4,500 years, the amount of animals and plant matter that's decayed and got locked into the sediment and built up over time is really where that true kind of superpower is when we talk about carbon. And you can really see it in this picture on the right. You can see that build-up of sediment. And with that interlocking root system on the top, if you leave these meadows alone, that carbon will stay in the ground. Yeah, and coastal protection as well. The wave waves, the power waves are kind of taken away that way by this meadow as well, and so you're getting a bit of coastal protection. Really big thing is providing a habitat. So this is another huge superpower it has. These meadows, much the same as coral reefs do, they provide a home for life in the ocean. The 3D structure of the leaves providing a place for animals to live, to shelter, to hunt, to breed, to lay their eggs, and to grow up. And a lot of research has shown, especially for really a lot of commercially important species, this picture on the top is a juvenile cod. So plaice and saithe have been found around Scotland. These juvenile fish can live in the meadows until they get big enough to join the bigger fishes. The picture in the bottom corner there is a dog whelk egg. So animals will attach, like cuttlefish, squid, eggs will attach their eggs to the seagrass leaves. It's a real hotspot of biodiversity, as Bonnie will contest, or anybody who has been snorkeling in a meadow. The more that you get your eye in, the more that you see. Lots of grazers, periwinkles, isopods will live on the seagrass leaves. So it increases biodiversity and improves our fish stocks. Improves water quality as well. It cycles nutrients, and this is definitely Esther's area of expertise. So if you have any questions for her, please pop them in the chat. And they're also beautiful places to be. So for recreation, for connection to nature, for well-being and health, they're beautiful places to take photos, especially on a sunny day, as you can see from this picture. There's nothing nicer than floating about a seagrass meadow, seeing what you can find in the leaves. Are there any questions at this point? No, I will carry on. So we're going to move on to look at what threatens seagrass.
Katie, I just had a quick one.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, did you say the meadow in Australia was 20 or 200 square kilometers?
200 square kilometers and 20,000 football pitches.
It is actually 4,000 square kilometers, but the one plant that they've so Shark Bay has an area of around 4,000 square kilometers of seagrass, but the one single species, they have, I think, 12 species in Shark Bay, seagrass species. And the one species that they found is the 200 square kilometers.
There we go.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you for correcting me.
Well.
Thanks for that. So one species, 20,000 square kilometers. I mean, it's still pretty epic, right? Okay, thanks for that. So, I mean, there's no guesses about what threatens seagrass. It is anthropogenic. So anthropogenic stresses are human-made stresses that are not intentionally causing the harm that they're causing, but they come from our activities. So we can kind of split them easily nice and neatly into two sort of categories. So physical disturbances. So coastal development, building ports, building different things along the coast. You're increasing water turbidity, you're increasing sediment movement and things like that. Even if the med wasn't right next to the development, that water quality will often get carried onto it. Destructive fishing, anything that disturbs the bottom of the seabed. I mean, it's self-explanatory. Trawling, things like that. Anchorages and moorings from boats. You can see from this picture, this is the Solent where we work down the Isle of Wight. They cause mooring scars, you get anchor chains. I think with these physical disturbances, it's about how can we work with these industries to raise awareness and make these practices better and less damaging. One thing that we do in the Isle of Wight is we work with putting in advanced mooring systems. So it's a series of floats that will hold the chains off the ocean floor with just one point of anchor. And then we've got a big one for seagrass, which is poor water quality. This is a pretty huge stressor for seagrass globally. Especially in highly densely populated areas, such as the UK. We are an island nation that's quite well populated. You're going to have lots of activity and lots of things happening on the land, things like agriculture, industry, and then you get leaching and runoff into the marine environment, which is set up to deal with nutrients and cycle them. But when we overload them, that's when we get a bit of a problem. So these excessive nutrients that go in causes eutrophication, and it causes algal blooms. So you're getting these algae to grow and smother the seagrass and block the sunlight from the seagrass. Also, another big sort of stressor is the effluence that comes from aquaculture, from fish farms. You're concentrating a huge amount of animals and often pesticides and all the drugs that they use to keep the animals pest-free is building up. And quite often, especially in Orkney, we work up there and there's quite a lot of fish farms very close to seagrass meadows. So that is a big concern. And untreated sewage. Down south, the team have worked a lot with Surfers Against Sewage to do water quality reports and trying to look into, and especially in Scotland, and like sort of old septic tanks and things like that, where you've got sewage that are going in that is causing these this eutrophication of the ocean. And what it does is it causes things like this. So as you can see in this top left picture, we have got a very highly smothered seagrass meadow covered in an algal mat. And that's clearly not going to be doing so well. It's blocking it from the sunlight. Down in the bottom right here, we have epiphytes, which is the name that we give to algae that grows actually on the blade. Now, a little bit of epiphytes is perfectly normal. You would expect to see it. And indeed, it is food for things like periwinkles and all these kind of like isopods that live on the blades of the seagrass. And there's a symbiotic relationship there that works really well. But when we overload it, you get too many epiphytes and it will start to harm and potentially kill the seagrass. So this labels seagrass as an indicator species, or one of the things it does. That if you are monitoring your local meadow and you notice an increase in the amount of epiphytes present, then there's a good chance that there's something changed locally with what's getting put into the water. So that kind of allows a bit of monitoring to go on of the marine environment. So how can we help? There's two big sort of well-known sort of areas talked about with seagrass at the moment, publicised as well, and that's restoration and of course conservation. So I just want to talk briefly about restoration. This is a graphic from a paper that was published in 2015, so quite a while ago now. And this was 1,786 trials happening globally. So this is just draw attention to the fact that there has been a lot of people and a lot of scientist groups working on seagrass restoration for quite a long while, and making progress all of the time and learnings and trying to work together to work out how to go about this. Seagrass restoration in Scotland is complicated, it's expensive, and it involves a lot of different steps. To trial one methodology will take you the best part of a year, if not more than that. You're going to more than that to monitor it as well. You have to go back. It's not, the job's not done once the seed's in the ground. You've got to see if it will survive. So it is a very long and costly process. Seed-based restoration trials, very much so. You have to harvest your seeds 1 year, process them, store them, understand how to germinate them, get them in the ground, and then go back and do quarterly monitoring before you can be sure that it's been successful. Not to downplay the importance of this at all, but I think it's important to understand that restoration is in the trials phase, and it's something that we're learning to get better at. But it's not the answer to saving the seagrass that we've already got. And I think that we can look through restoration under the lens of conservation as part of conservation. So when we're researching seagrass ecosystems and when we're learning about them, all that research and knowledge can go into how we protect them better and how we look after them, how we keep that carbon in the ground, how we encourage higher levels of biodiversity. And then that can lead on to passive restoration as well. This comes from the research. It's like those things like water quality. How can we So passive restoration means about removing those stressors that are causing the degradation of the ecosystem. So can we improve the water quality? Can we improve the aquaculture and all the things that are damaging it? And then if it makes sense to, and we have taken those stressors away, then maybe we can do some restoration. So I think that's kind of, we really want to look after what we've got. So how do we look after what we've got? The first thing is just to understand where it is, really simply. In general, throughout Scotland, we really don't have a good understanding of where all the meadows are and the sizes of them. So it's step one, really. This is a picture of Esther with our fantastic drone, very fancy piece of kit that she programs on her tablet and sends it up in the sky. And it uses satellites and does a big track, and it produces the maps that you can see on the other side of the slide. So once you've got those maps, you need to go in and ground truth. So you'll go in snorkeling and take pictures, take a handheld GPS and actually say, yeah, we know this is seagrass. Unfortunately, that drone only flies in nice weather. So that's why Esther didn't visit with us last week. Because you can't, I think it's 8 kilometers, Esther, that you can fly it in or something?
8 meters per second is the maximum wind speed it can go. And obviously it can't support any rain at all. So yeah, niche thing in Scotland to do.
It's a fantastic piece of kit, but yeah, not many windows in Scotland to use it. So what we do to map instead, which Pete is going to go into more detail about, so I'll leave him to do that, is doing it snorkeling, which is what we were doing last week, which again, when it's cold water and stormy and you're camping is also got a time limit on it. But first thing we need to do is just know where is our seagrass and at what is the extent of it. When we've got this polygon data, we can get it into the regulatory bodies for protection. So this is what we need help with. As has been really well demonstrated on this trip, we can plan to go places to do this work, but we can't plan around the weather. But locals, you know when the weather's good and you know when you can get out and you live there and you're out walking. So this brings me to Seagrass Spotter, which is what I briefly touched on earlier. So this is developed by Project Seagrass. It's a global accessible tool for point data. So you can upload presence and absence, and it's all over the world. All these little red spots have just been put up by somebody on their phone. You can view it on a website, which is different from the app. So you get an app from your phone, which you use to take the picture, but the website will give you further detail. It's an open source for everyone. So if you want to go and find seagrass, you're on holiday or even somewhere else in Scotland, it can show you exactly where it is if you want to go and snorkel and take some photos. It really is the first port of call that we look at when we're going to a new area to do any kind of seagrass work. We will go to this, first of all, to see where the points are. And that means we can go in and sort of check and do some more in-depth surveys. What's really nice about it as well is when you upload a sighting, I don't know if you can see here, the name of people comes up. So it does mean that it does signpost us to who is interested and who's engaging in it as well.
Katie? Katie, can I just say, did you know that A. Higgs was he was working with me last year? So there's not been many locals adding seagrass spotters to Islay. Most of them were me and Alex last year, and then us lot this year. So hopefully now that you guys know about it, you can fill in a lot more.
It's such an easy thing to do, and when you sign up, it takes you through a series of questions to help you identify it, and you can also add in some extra information about the kind of state and health of the meadow and how you saw it, and it's a really accessible. It's like phase 1 of citizen science, really. As this infographic shows you, you just get the app on your phone, spot some seagrass, snap a photo. And then your phone uses the GPS to put it on the map. And then the team down south at Project Seagrass HQ go through the photos to verify them and to check. So this really does lead on to work with seagrass taking place. And I think if we see that there's lots of spots somewhere where we didn't think there would be seagrass, then we will go and check it out, or we'll try to. The other thing that you can do if you're interested as a community is to monitor for seagrass characteristics. Nature Scott created this community-led marine biodiversity handbook for community groups to learn about your marine environment. And it's not just seagrass, there's all sorts of surveys that you can do in there. You can get it from the website. It's available and accessible on the Nature Scot website if you just search for their handbook. And it's just a way that communities can get involved in monitoring and learning about what's on your doorstep. Sometimes seagrass is coined as the gateway ecosystem because it is a plant. It's not a coral reef. So while we don't understand the complexities of it, we all know what a plant is. And because it is in shallow coastal areas, it's accessible for people. You can go out and you can see it. You don't need to dive. You don't need to go abroad. And when you start to learn about these things, you start to see that connection that we have to nature and to the marine environment. And I think Bonnie will probably contest this. The minute that she was telling us a story about she was swimming and then she stuck her head in the water and was like, wow. And ever since then, she just got completely immersed in it, for want of a better pun. But yeah, I think it's good to signpost to that. And then we've got the BSAC Great Seagrass Survey, which is another citizen science programme. Sea Wilding, we work closely with them. They're in Argyll, in Lochcraignish, and on their website and YouTube channel, there's lots of useful guides and methodologies that you can access. And then the biggest thing, one of the biggest things is just awareness raising, because you can't protect what you don't know or you don't understand. So we met up with Bonnie and went snorkeling with her. So you can follow her on Instagram, Islay Snorkeler. And we also visited the Islay High School, and Marianne took her students out the very next day to go and see seagrass. So I think it's not that hard sell when people understand what it is, especially for fishermen. You speak to a lot of fishermen who are like, that green stuff, and they know what it is, never look after it. And then you're like, that gives you fish. And they're interested. So that's me, done my bit of talking. I don't know how many people have we got in, 15. I don't know if we want to have a brief break or whether we can go on to the next presentation. If you want a break, do you want to raise a hand? That sounds like everybody's okay. Has anybody got any questions at the moment? Does anybody have anything they want to ask or raise at this point?
Yeah, I do, Katie.
Yes,
There
Tom.
are obviously other key. Sorry, there's obviously other key marine species associated with carbon locking. How much are you looking at those whilst you're looking at seagrass?
Do you mean things like oysters or kelps or things, or other kind of merle, things like that?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we are Project Seagrass because we're focused on seagrass, but we do work with other groups. Esther, you working with Restoration Forth a bit?
Yeah, we signpost our data, or like what we found to others. For example, last year in Orkney, we did our surveys, but we also worked with Plymouth Marine Lab because they were looking for kelp actually. So when we found some kelp or like a specific species of kelp, we would send them a GPS point. But generally, we're just really happy if we find merle. We don't know who would be interested in that at the moment, for example. But generally, we would be like.
We do work. Yeah, we do work with a lot of. We help facilitate research, further research. So I'm up in Orkney, and been Esther's part of a PhD looking at the mosaics, aren't you? With Harriet Watt up there between these different ecosystems. She's a supervisor on that. So there is crossover. Yeah.
No, that's very pleasing to hear, Katie, because as part of the Carbon Neutral Islands project, we do have a blue carbon aspect to it, and we were asked to go out and look at the seabed maps for Islay. They don't exist. So the very fact that you're doing this is brilliant because it's not been done before.
I think that's true of so much of Scotland, actually. Was that fair to say, Esther, from what we know, from what we've done? There's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, the coastline is so long, and yeah, we are basically relying on charities like us or individuals to map the seafloor because
Peter,
regulators are struggling to actually map what is underwater.
Yeah, well, it's expensive. Yeah.
It is expensive. Amy's asking, do you need to be snorkeling to see and record it? And that's a good question to ask Bonnie. You know about your local meadows.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I mean, myself and Emma Baker, we started snorkeling last year, and then obviously came across a few meadows, and then decided actually we ought to be mapping these, we ought to be doing something. So we were looking at the sea wilding methodology, and it was something that we were going to do this year. And then I think my husband got into a conversation with James and found out you guys were coming. So it's been really good to link up and sort of see you guys in action and know that we can sort of help what you're doing and carry on with a bit of monitoring and hopefully finding some new meadows as well.
Yeah. Apart from snorkeling, what people also do is kayaking or using drop-down cameras but generally I would recommend snorkeling because I've been in a kayak and it's quite hard to not fall over and look over the side of the kayak. And sometimes it's quite nice to just lower down a camera, because if the water clarity is not as good, you can still see what's down there. So what I've done was I just had my GoPro on a piece of rope with the stone and then lowered it down and recorded what's down there.
Also, with I
was just going to say, it's worth saying that Pete's going to cover quite a lot of this in his presentation, aren't you, Pete?
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe we'll halt those thoughts in that conversation. We'll go on to Pierre, because I think that a lot of these questions will get answered in discussions with because Pete's going to show us maps and things that he has actually got from Islay. So yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, Bonnie. Okay, cool. So we'll go with Pierre first, and then we'll move on to Pete with the local stuff. Are you good to go, Pierre?
Yeah. Do you want me to, can I share my screen already? Yeah.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, all good. Okay. Right. Thanks, Katie. Can you see my screen, everyone? Yes.
That's all good.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining, obviously. Good to see you all and a bit of interest into seagrass. So I'm Pierre. And I was last week with Pete and Katie on Islay to do my data collection for my this project. So I'm a student at Edinburgh University, and my master is called Marine Systems and Policies. And the goal of my dissertation, the aim is to illustrate that the significance of small seagrass meadows as vital ecosystems, irrespective of their size, with a focus on biodiversity. Thank you. So what did we do on Islay? So here's the equipment then that Katie, Pete and I used. So on the left-hand side, you can see the Brov. So some of you guys have seen it, and there's a couple of people when we were on Islay that were quite interested about it, because it does look quite funny first. But yeah, so essentially it's just a frame with a weight at the bottom, so that when you drop it down in the water in the meadow. Yep.
Sorry to stop you.
Yeah, that's okay.
I can't see your screen. Is anyone else having that problem?
No, I saw it perfectly.
Yes, okay.
No,
Do you
I
want me
see
to?
it.
Just me. Okay. I'll
It's
survive.
okay. It's okay, Peter.
Carry on.
I'm stop sharing, and I'm sharing it again. Let me know if that works.
That's perfect, Pete.
Yeah, perfect.
I mean, Pierre, perfect. Carry on.
Yeah, all good. Okay. Okay. So the BROVs, sorry. So the BROVs are the abbreviation for baited underwater remote video. So yeah, again, essentially it's quite easy. It's just a weight on the frame with a camera and a bait in front of it, and you drop it down in the water in the middle. You leave it. Well, I left it. Katie, Pete, and I left the BROVs for an hour. 2 BROVs per meadow per day. And that was it. And the idea is that afterwards I'm going to spend quite a long time in front of my laptop, looking at those videos and seeing the wildlife hopefully coming to the bait, because the idea is to not disturb the wildlife with those browse as a method, so that you see what's down there. The second work that we did was with this transect, the 50, the yellow little tape thing. The idea there was to lay 3 transect, 10 meters long transect per meadow. We did that with KT, and it's a similar method to the BRAV. This just says the biodiversity in the meadows. But obviously, since you're in the water, you obviously disturb some of the biodiversity, but some other biodiversity is a lot easier to see, like crabs and so on. And so that is the method I'm gonna basically kind of compare within my dissertation, the reliability of both methods. So we did both of those last week. We also did some health survey with the little square thing that you see there. So it's a quadrat. And same thing. So the idea was to lay. Yeah, Katie, you had a question, sorry, or no? It's okay, sorry, because I see you in the corner of my screen. I thought you were okay. That's sorry. And yeah, so the idea there was to lay 3 quadrats per meadow, recording couple characteristics like seagrass, percentage cover. Bunny, you saw us doing that a little bit. The percentage cover of epiphytes, the number of reproductive shoots, and the number of shoots, etc. So that was the idea. And with that little GPS thing on the right-hand side, we'd record the position of each BRAV, of each transect. And so yeah, basically that was it. So that's what we did for a week in the water. I'll show you now some videos. No, the videos are coming afterwards. Okay, so and where did we do that? So we did that in Kildalton, which was on the 2nd of June. That was with Peter, and on the 5th of June with Katie in that little circle there that you can see. That's where we met on the 5th, Marianne, on our way back with Katie walking in the water. We were just there in that little circle. Yeah, so that was the first site. Second site, Garbrek, amazing meadow, much bigger than Kildalton, a lot of seals. That was great as well. And that was on the 3rd of June. And the third site was Port Ellen, where we met Bonnie as well. We went twice. But essentially, yeah, we did the same methods at the 3 sites, and they're quite an interesting meadow as well. You can really see there's kind of a difference in the half of the meadow coming from the right hand side here to the left side. So it was quite interesting to see. So yeah, so these were the 3 sites where we worked on, and now I'm going to show you what it looks like. There we go. So I'm going to show you videos of the BRAV transect and me doing the quadrats, so you get a little bit of an idea of how it looks like. So that was in Garbrek, if I remember well. And yeah, the idea is just to leave that down there. And we can see a couple of fish there. 2 spot guppies, I think. You can see. Love epiphytes as well. Here we can see. And so that is the idea of the BRAV, basically. It's just to leave it down there and see what's happening biodiversity wise. Like, so that's the BRAV. Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna. Oh, there we go. And the transect. So the transect, the idea was again to lay down the 10 meters tape. And as KT had a slate underwater and noting the biodiversity, I was with a camera filming just above the tape and any biodiversity that would see on either side of it, to just check and have a record of this. And so that was the idea, and that was in Garbrek. And at the end of it, there might be a little surprise. There we go. I think that's Katie that we hear. So that was quite cool. Two of them, I was a bit close, but yeah, two of them just laying there. Quite cool to see. There was a couple of them that day. Yep. So that was the transect, and now
What
the
are
last
they?
one. Come again?
What are they again?
See here.
Remember what they are? See here, that's right. Yeah.
And so so that was the transect, and the last thing that we do was the quadrats. And so here you can see me, I think there I was counting the number of shoots within the quadrat, which is quite easy when the water is this shallow, but it's not always like this. So sometimes I had to duck dive and hold my breath for quite a while. Thank God Katie and Pete had some weight belts. They could hold me down there for a little bit longer. And yeah, but this one was quite easy. That was in guard break as well, this meadow. So yes, that was quite a good day as well. And tick. Oh, that's working. And I think, yeah, so yeah, again, some cool pictures of on the left side, Gerbreak, Ireland, and Kildalton on the right side. And obviously Karuisk, Pete's dog, obviously with us, always around in the water. It was great. And so with all those data that I've collected, which I haven't yet analyzed since we're just back from my lessons couple of days, but the expected result is that seagrass are a significant and vital ecosystem, irrespective of their size. That's really what I'm trying to show there. And yeah, so and here a couple hypotheses I laid out, which basically summarize this result. So yeah, that's about it for that. If anyone has any question, feel free to fire through, and thank you very much for listening.
Thanks very much, Pierre. That was really great. Super interesting. It'll be interesting to see. Pierre's got all the data that he now has to look through, so it'll be interesting to see what you come up with. But yeah, it was very well done.
Yeah.
Against all the odds.
So yeah, and something I forgot to mention as well is that seagrass meadows are compared to many other habitats, they're usually the bigger the habitat is, the more biodiversity within it. It's not necessarily the case with seagrass meadows, which is why I'm very interested in I guess that's the main point as well that I forgot to mention. But yeah, interesting to see the relationship there, and hopefully show that there's no relationship. So yes, so if anyone has any question, and otherwise I'll hand it to Pete for his presentation and the maps.
Any questions? Be another chance at the end for questions as well.
Yeah, sure. I'll just got my mic, Pete, and I'll leave you for
cool.
it. Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks, Pierre. I couldn't see your slides at all. I tried refreshing it and doing pop-out window. That was very strange.
I'm sorry. I thought you. Okay, I can send it over. Hopefully, in the recording it'll work.
Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, more just. Hopefully, I won't be. We obviously went through this together, but didn't check all the pictures. So hopefully, I'm not repeating any of your pictures. Anyway, and hopefully, I can share my screen. I am in the very end of the phone line. We occasionally get 5 megabits per second when we're lucky. So I'll just share my screen. Share screen. No. See, we practiced this earlier and I could share my screen fine, but now it won't let me. That's really frustrating. Try a window. No, I'm going to leave the meeting. Can you readmit me in a second, Katie?
Sure, we can do. Otherwise, send it to us and we can pull it up.
Yeah, we can try that. But I was going to do like interact or sort of moving around GIS, but
Did you say you joined through the browser, Pete? It might be that.
As opposed to, you think it'll work better if I join through the browser?
No, I thought if you had joined through the browser, that might be causing the issue, but I'm also stabbing wildly in the dark. So.
I think we all are tonight. I'm just copying that link from the chat into a Word doc, and then I'm going to leave and try and come back. Okay, leaving now.
Yeah, sorry guys. Teams has been quite problematic in other. I don't know if anybody else is having problems with it recently, but we have had problems in other calls as well. So sorry about that. Oh, here he comes. Technology is good when it works, right? It's not really admitting. I know what we could do. It's just, I don't know if you can see what I can see. It's a spinny circle. I'm going to share my screen. I don't know if you guys have heard of Mentimeter before. It's a way of kind of, oh, there he's back. Hi, Pete. You're back in. Do you want to try?
Yeah. Share screen.
Yes.
It works.
Yeah. Excellent. Right. Sorry about that, everyone. Did you want to finish any chat, or shall I just kick off?
Again, we go for it.
Okay. So my name's Pete. I started Seek Entire about 4 years ago now, and I actually did the same degree that Pierre is doing now. And I work with a couple of universities in Edinburgh, worked with Heriot Watt and Edinburgh Uni hosting students. And the aims of Seek Entire are to raise awareness of fragile marine habitats, not just seagrass, although seagrass is good for several reasons. It's accessible, it's close to the shore. There's quite a lot going on in terms of media at the moment about seagrass, and it's a really fun environment to snorkel in. To record and monitor their extent. So I'm all about mapping. I feel like if you map a seagrass meadow and then you map it again, say 2 or 3 years later, and you can either say it's gotten bigger, which is great, or you can say it's gotten smaller and this area therefore needs more protection. And I want to create opportunities for others to see and study these habitats. That jellyfish there is actually from Lochendal last year. I didn't see any this year. I was there a little bit later in the year last year. So that's a compass jellyfish. And yeah, you tend to see them when the water is a bit warmer. Okay, I'm going to switch to some photos. Has that worked? Has everyone got a photo of a sea hare?
Yeah, that works for me.
Great. Yeah, I'll just go through these quite quickly. I mean, I feel like it's might seem a bit lazy to just show you photos, but like I just think it's really important, and it's so much fun to see what's actually in there. So these are all these photos are from Islay in the last week. I can't remember exactly which spot they all are. I think this is Gark Breck, and this looks like a relatively young edge of a seagrass meadow because there's not this buildup of sort of underwater peat, which you'll see in other pictures. So that would be exciting if it's relatively young, because it means seagrass is still encroaching on new areas when it gets a chance. And then this is a sort of really ancient seagrass meadow where you have this layer of underwater peat. Esther might be able to chip in here if if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, does that look like, would that be damage where you get an exposed edge like that, or does that just happen naturally?
Both. I don't know the like background to that meadow, but usually we see that there is damage. But usually, if the seagrass meadow is healthy, it can grow back, and if there are not too many other pressures. But
Okay.
you see that quite regularly. But this is also quite nice. And quite nice example how the seagrass can actually stabilize the sediment, and you can, I mean, I can imagine the carbon in this meadow now.
Yeah.
Maybe you
so
can
much.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It's literally like the same sort of peat you get on land, but underwater. So yeah, it sequesters so much carbon dioxide. And then this, so that's an example of a healthy one. And then this broke my heart a bit because it's not super clear from the picture, but when I was there, I could see it was an old seagrass bed because they had the exact same raised layer of peat. But then instead of healthy seagrass on top of it, it's just got all this algae, macroalgae, bootlaceweed, I think it is mainly. And I guess it's a bit like coral bleaching. So the thing that made the structure has died, but the structure is still there. And I don't know if the rhizomes are in the soil or in the peat are still alive and if they could come back, or if there's been a sort of what you call a phase shift in ecosystems where it's just switched from a seagrass dominated phase to an algae. The thing about this algae is it needs a substrate to grow on. It can't grow on sand because it doesn't grow roots like seagrass does. It just gets washed away. But now that seagrass has made this layer over hundreds, if not thousands of years, and then as a result of eutrophication, it's now been taken over by algae. And over time, that layer of peat will get broken up by wave action because there's no roots, or the roots are gradually dying, and it will get washed away. But I don't know for how long. I guess that will just be an app. Yeah.
But there's a question from Tom asking where that was.
That is in Lochendal, north of Beaumore. Relatively close to the harbour, actually. Sorry, please let me know about questions. All I can see is my own screen. I can't see anything else. So yeah, Katie, just chip in if I need to go. Okay, this is an example. Sometimes it's getting quite deep. So I was snorkeling and I used a little bit of zoom on my camera and stuck my arms down as deep as I could. And that's just good enough. You know, we can tell it's seaweed. I'd be very surprised if it was Zostera nulltii because it's so deep. So we can definitely say that's Zostera marina. So if you are out snorkeling and you have a camera, you can duck dive if you're competent and confident. When I'm snorkeling, mapping, I don't take weights, and I've got a very thick wetsuit, and I have a float for so it's pretty difficult to duck dive when I'm mapping. So that's about the deepest, purest quality photo you could put onto Seagrass Spotter. But even that is very valuable because it shows us there is seagrass in that area. Just a little video. This was in Lochendal, a healthier bit. I'll come on to the maps in a bit, but the meadow in Lochendal is absolutely huge. And you see where there's more anthropogenic influences like harbors or rivers, you get the algae taking over, but then further out, you get more of a pristine meadow. Actually, Tuesday, when it was really choppy, but you know, a couple of meters underwater, there was duck diving for this. The seagrass is just, you know, you wouldn't know there was waves on the surface. That's snakelops anemone. So that's just to show how the anemone literally grips the seagrass with its. So if there was no seagrass, there would be no anemones. Starfish. Just go through these a bit quicker. I think that's the photos next one, a video. Yeah, this was yesterday. I should say I gambled on staying a bit longer, and I got well, one good day of weather yesterday, which for me made it worth it. But yeah, it was. We were battling the elements most of the time. But yeah, it's a big shoal of sand eels, and where they like to hang out in seagrass. So see encroaching on the sand. So this looks like, again, relatively new growth, and it's trying to make inroads out into the sand. And then you can see some algae growing up around the base of the seagrass there. Esther, I might put you on the spot again. How do you rate seagrass chances with that amount of algae growing around it? Do you think it'll still be there next year?
Yeah, I would say it's still there.
Here?
You can see we can read, like, you can see most of the leaves are still fine. So it will have a lot of space to photosynthesize. And so I would say they're there. They will be there, and it also looks like it's expanding there. Good chances, but maybe you've taken a GPS point and we can have a look.
Great. Yeah. On my camera, and I was taking photos from the surface with the GPS coordinates, and then because you don't get the signal under. I should speed up a bit. I just say my signal. Esther, you were breaking up a lot there. I think it's probably my internet. So somebody, Katie or Esther, can you text me on WhatsApp if I drop out, because I probably won't even know if I've dropped out. That's just a cute example of a new seedling, doing its best, forging off alone, and hopefully it'll be cute little place. Easy mapping. Okay. So mapping. Right. Katie mentioned Seagrass Spotter earlier. Such a useful tool for mapping because, yep.
I was just thinking, why don't you turn your video off? It might improve the quality of the call. Quite often that works because you're breaking out quite a lot. You're like all bitty. Did you hear me?
Sure. I'll do that. I can hear you. Yeah. Is that any better? I've turned my video off. Is that any better?
Yeah, I think it is actually.
Yeah, it seems to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you've got like a mini me in the corner of the slide. It's going crazy. Anyway. Seagrass Spotter is such a useful tool because we don't know where to map where he puts a pinpoint there. And last year when I was here, we had some ancient points from 1985 from Scottish Natural Heritage when they did a big survey of Islay, but they didn't have much technology in those days, so it was quite hard. Like, I don't think handheld GPSs were a thing in those days. So they just had literally pinpoints, and that's how I found this one at Gartbrick, which is the map in the top left. But nowadays, anyone can add a pinpoint. So yeah, get on Seagrass. And something to look at on this map on the top. When you look at the satellite imagery, you have an idea of where you might find seagrass. Typically, it'll grow beside sandy areas because its roots will go down into sand. And you might look at that picture line, it just changes from kelp or macroalgae to seagrass. So that's why you have to get in the water, really have a look. And how? So basically, you're in your wetsuit, you're snorkeling, you have a GPS device, which, or it can just be your phone in a waterproof case. And to be honest, a phone I find more user-friendly. It's connected to the internet, so you use an app like OS or Strava, and it'll just automatically upload that to the cloud or to to their servers, and then on your PC, log in and you can download all the information. You don't have to plug your phone into any wires or anything. I mean, I've never had a problem with my phone getting wet. You can buy a decent waterproof pouch, and then I literally just duct tape it onto a float, like a kid's swimming pool float is fine. And then you tow it behind you, and you just have to periodically make sure it's floating the right way up, because you'll lose signal. Okay, I'm going to show a bit of GIS quickly. GIS is just, I think it stands for Geographical Information Software. If anyone who knows better, feel free to correct me.
It's is a Geographic Information System.
System.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm going to show Islay as you've never seen it before. Take away and bring in the seagrass. That's a map of Islay seagrass that we know about so far, and some of it is suspected seagrass. So down here in the bottom right, hopefully you can see the little cursor. That is Kildalton, two tiny little meadows. Here is Port Ellen, again a pretty tiny meadow. Up here, after my explorations yesterday, I actually suspect this
Pete, your map hasn't loaded.
purple area is seagrass. Do you mean it's just a white screen with some?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yep,
That was the idea. Yeah. No, that was the idea, that there was no map, and I was just going to show you like the seagrass area, and then I'd bring the map in afterwards. But that's all good as long as you can see it now. So what we do is this red area was one of the old records from Scottish Natural Heritage. Went in there 4 days last year. That's Port Charlotte. Didn't find any seagrass, but we recorded where we went, and now we know there's actually no seagrass there, which is sad. But as I remember, if Katie said, we've lost 90% of our seagrass in the UK. This is Port Ban, which is the closest that we found to Bruichladdich. Again, this is an old road confirmed by Project Seagrass's one of their founders a few years ago. He just did seagrass spotter uploads, and then I went in and mapped it. And then the orange area is suspected grass because you can see if we take it away. So the fact that the green area is seagrass and then it just carries on out, would suspect that that is the orange is seagrass, but it could be all turned up, and when it gets deeper than a meter or two, you can't see a thing. So I'm just going to run through a quick example of what actually happens. Okay, shall I just call it off there?
No, maybe just like demonstrate do your demonstration that you wanted to do.
Huge thanks to Bonnie for giving us the tip off that there was going to be seagrass here. So what happens is you get your track off your Strava or OS maps. That's and then through some sort of magic bash your head off the GIS brick wall for about a year until you figure out where all the magic buttons. You can make it into a map like that, which is very, very satisfying, I find. Kind of black shapes, and then the map fairly well overlaps. Again, what I would say is, see here is like a dark patch, which is seagrass, and then a light patch, which is a different kind of algae. But you can't. Sometimes the seagrass is lighter when it's less. So you just have to get. And then what I found at the northeastern end of this meadow was that it was getting deep to see. So but I could see that the seagrass carried on beyond visibility. So I've put in an orange area for where I think there's more seagrass. Right, I'll just get onto this big purple area. This is really on my paddleboard right out into the loch. And every so often I was tied onto the paddleboard so I knew it wouldn't float away from me. I gave myself enough. And even where the water was black, like deep sort of blue black at the surface, and you couldn't see the bottom. If you duck dive down a couple of meters, you can then see the seabed, and it was grass the whole way out. So so as far as asking about the area that you mentioned earlier, Katie, because this little green area, where is it? I think it's in 2023. This area that is flashing, the green area at the east end, that's 0.174 square kilometers. That was mapped last year. Now I've just drawn this area because after yesterday doing that yellow line, I suspect that this is all seagrass. And if that purple area is seagrass, it would be 9 square kilometers, which I think is absolutely massive. But you know, what was it? 4,000 square kilometers or something in Australia? But still, that would be very exciting if that was all seagrass. I'll just say about the bridge end flats here, because if you want to see seagrass without going snorkeling, this is your best place to see it. This is Zostera nultii, so tidal seagrass. It looks like a really small version of Zostera marina. And in the north half of the flats, there's like some very patchy spots. And then on the just off, can't remember the name of this point, but you know, you've got Bowmore down here, whatever this place is called. Apologies. You've got quite a dense Zostera nultii meadow, and because we mapped Port Ellen the other day, let's just have a quick look at that again. To Bonnie for showing us this meadow. So we mapped the southern half of the meadow and went back in, and they have gone around the northern half, and I've not made that into a pretty map yet. Right, well, I've not, Katie hasn't stopped me again, so I assume you can still hear me, but do stop me if you can't hear me. Done that. GIS. But I'm finished anyway, so just any questions now? Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks to everybody. We've had a bit of a technological challenge. If it's not weather, it's technology. I don't know which one's worst. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to ask us about what you've heard from any of the presentations? It's worth saying that I will send out an email out to you all from Ticket Tailor, so we can put some links or any requests for any information. We can put that in that. So yeah, so any questions, please raise your hand. Or yep, Marianne.
Is it possible to get the slides?
Yes, it is possible to get the slides. Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll put if there's anything else anyone else would like. And I'm also ask if we can keep your emails on record as well for GDPR, because this project has got subsequent years. But yeah, any other questions? I can see Fiona's got.
Yeah. Can I ask, what is the likely influence of sewage and not sewage on seagrass meadows? Because 25 years ago, Bowmore and Port Charlotte, basically all the villages the sewage used to go out into the sea, and then obviously Scottish Water did a whole sewage system for all the villages, and the distilleries stopped putting all their effluent out into the sea, so that all gets tankered up and released up at Kalila into the Sound of Islay. Just the influence, whether that's benefited your seagrass meadows or the lack of nutrients, obviously it hasn't not benefited, but maybe in the past it was poorer.
So generally in the UK, we have a problem with too much nutrients. So probably all the sewage had a negative impact on the seagrass. It depends a lot on how long it takes the tides to flush away the water. But usually what you get when you have excess nutrients in the water is that you have this algal overgrowth, and then the seagrass gets too little light. And then usually what you see is that the deeper edges of the seagrass disappear slowly, or the seagrass disappears right from the source. So probably the seagrass has, and then if you take away those pressures, actually, and there's still seagrass in your bay, it can recover. So it could be that after they have put in the sewage treatment and taken away the sewage from the distilleries, that the seagrass has expanded again since then.
It's just that I have a feeling there's a negative effect on sort of birds like the scaup. We used to have a large flock of wintering within Lochindale there, and their numbers have dwindled down to almost nothing. And it's just whether that's the nutrients fed or the shellfish that they were feeding on, and therefore their food disappeared. But if it's a benefit to the meadows, then that's good. I just thought I'd add that in.
Actually, this is something that happened in the Firth of Forth. So when there was still a lot of sewage, there were some, I can't remember, there was some kind of ducks that came to feed on all the worms and all the that lived in the soft bottom sediments that actually came from the sewage. And once they started implementing sewage treatment and they put less into the sea, then the ducks disappeared. But then other species came. So it's the question why some species are there, and basically what do we want? Where do we want to go back? I don't know what birds you were talking about and what they feed on.
The sea duck, which died for shellfish. But so but the other comment I was just going to add in was that you're talking about that area that looked like degraded near Bamore. Just that the harbour there gets dredged periodically and things, so that might just be the influence of sediment moved out from the bay. So, yeah, really good. Thank you. It's been really interesting.
Marianne, you did have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say how interesting it was for you coming into school the other day, and how much the students have talked about it, and the fact that all of that is right literally on our doorstep is amazing, because we want this as an education centre, and that's given us a massive boost to know that that's just there. And they were interested, they've talked about it since, and we'll follow it up. So thank you for spending that time, all of you.
You're very welcome. After we visited the school, we saw the site at the Noltai site, and it's the perfect site to do a monitoring programme with.
Right.
I think that's something that we can follow you up with how to do that, how to go about it.
Yeah,
you could definitely do that with the students.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
We'll be in touch. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tom.
Yeah, it's a fairly simple question. How deep can seagrass grow at? I ask this because I know obviously myself and James will be putting our wetsuits on in the next week. We need to know where to go.
Do you want to take this one, Esther? Or?
Yeah, it really depends on the water clarity. I've seen seagrass, I think the deepest in the UK was 13 meters, but that was Orkney
Really?
waters. But you get them much shallower as well, so you don't need to
We're
dive
much
that.
cleaner than Orkney. Not having that. 13 meters.
Yeah.
It's just I noticed you hadn't got any dots over at Gruniet. I would have thought Gruniet would have been one of the areas where you'd find it, to be fair.
I challenge you to get a dot on the map, Tom.
I
challenge you. I want to see your name come up, Tom.
Tom, Grignard's very shallow, isn't it?
Is what, sorry? Yeah,
isn't Grignard very shallow?
It's very shallow, but it does go, it stays shallow, and then it gets relatively deep. But around Nave Island, between Nave Island and the mainland coast of Islay, there's some very shallow bits around there.
It's funny you mention Grignard because I was searching there 2 days in the last couple of weeks because Malcolm Ogilvie had said, I think he said he thought he'd seen seagrass there in like 1982 or something. He hadn't been back since. So I went and had a good look for intertidal stuff. Sadly, no sign of it. I did see a huge cetacean skeleton. Like, I don't know if it's a minke whale, so that's worth going for a look at the moment. But yeah, we'd definitely like to get back to Loch Grignard and actually go snorkeling next time because I was just suspecting intertidal seagrass there.
Gotta be. I can't see how there can't be. But has Malcolm got the old seagrass maps then?
No, he's just got some memories in his head, I think.
I'll tap into them over coffee on Saturday.
Can I just ask? Sorry.
Sure.
Would it be possible?
No, sure.
Sorry. Would it be possible to get some information and even maybe a display at some point at the Islay Nature Centre on the work that's being done and mapping? Because that would be a really good opportunity to get your information out there to people and for us to show something that's really local and happening.
I'm also going to make a sort of Google map and say I'll send a link to James and hopefully he can forward it, or maybe we can send it out to this list. I'll check with Katie, and then that'll be like a link online where you can go and see outlines of the maps. But yeah, it'd be great to get something in the nature museum.
Do you work there, Fiona?
Kind of help manage it, and
okay.
I'm one of the trustees, so
brilliant.
So all the displays and stuff.
We'd have to get some funding for it, but yeah, I think that's definitely something that would be interested in doing. I think there's
maybe
a real
through the Botanist Foundation, James. James, maybe something through the Botanist Foundation.
It's a definite possibility, Fiona. Yeah.
Nice one. I have to say, we've all been really, really impressed with the appetite and that there is on Islay to get involved in this kind of work. And I think, you know, as much as we can come over in certain times to do stuff, it's really, you know, it's you guys live there and it's your seagrass, it's your island, and where we can support you with that. So I think working with the school, putting some boards in, continuing this work, there's the structures there to build something, which is really exciting. So thanks for all being here. Yeah.
Can I just add?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, on you go, Tom. I'll go after you.
I just from as I hinted at the start of this, from the carbon neutral islands perspective, just to have someone making a start on this because we do need to try and calculate what the carbon store is around Islay and how we can improve it. And we've been scratching our heads for the last year or so as to how on earth we were going to do this, and you're doing it, and God bless you for it, because this is exactly what we've been looking for. So yeah, any access to any mapping would be more than welcome. And you know, James is in a position to help with funding. We quite possibly are as well. So yeah, let's move this forward. And I genuinely will put my wetsuit on. I haven't put it on for a year.
I'm gonna take all your names, and I want to see ticks on the map with all your names next to them.
I've just got to get some flippers and a snorkel.
Nothing but goose grease for me.
Manly man.
So
I was going to say, can I just say, yeah, we're going to send out an email to everyone who's registered with all our, myself and Katie and Pierre and Esther, with our email addresses. So like, please reach out to us and remind us what you want to happen next, whether it's access to mapping or an information board. Please email us and we'll try and make it happen.
Are you coming back next year as well? Was it a 3-year project? Is that the plan still?
I think it has to be approved again by the botanist, but hopefully.
Yeah, I think it might be good if we'd had the in-person meeting, we would have had post-it notes and used scribbling stuff and things like that. So I think what might be quite good is to send out, just from what Pete's just said there, I'll send out like a form, like a Google form, to get some feedback on these kind of things that have cropped up. And also to ask you for sort of your permission to keep your email addresses for GDPR purposes. And I think there's definitely some follow-ups from this trip to be had, and looking at next steps and possibilities around funding and things. But yeah, no, I think it's great.
It was a 3-year provisional agreement from the foundation, kind of based on you doing your homework and stuff. So it will have to come up for discussion, but yeah, we basically signed up for 3 years worth unless it all goes horribly wrong. So I think we're probably all right.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah. Oh,
one thing I wanted to mention to Tom: if you go out in the Seagrass Spotter app, there's also an option to spot absences, which makes your life maybe easier. But for us, it's also, when we go back and want to map, we know, okay, someone has been there and said, there's nothing, I haven't found any.
What you're saying is you've got previous maps that show where seagrass was, but you're recording where it has now failed.
No, just on the Seagrass Spotter app, where you just take a picture and you upload it to Seagrass Spotter. You can either take a picture of seagrass, or you take a picture of non-seagrass. And there's a special section for that, so you can actually upload the absence as well. Because often we look at that map and we say, okay, someone has found seagrass there, and in the next bay, it could also be seagrass. So we go there, there's no seagrass, but someone has been there before and seen, okay, there's no seagrass. Just to basically make a cross through that bay, there's no seagrass, I've checked it.
The other thing I was going to, on the subject of absence, actually, it was a question more for Pete. When you have been snorkeling out there, historically there's been scallop dredging through the Loch and Dal, and I know some of the divers that went for scallops, and it was like there'd been a road put through the seagrass. And I was wondering, because there hasn't been much scallop dredging through Loch and Dal for at least 10 years, whether there is a noticeable recovery from where that had been happening.
Right, well, that's interesting you say that, because I did see that there were some really marked strips where there is no seagrass, and I sort of was wondering why, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was confused as to why there is so much seagrass in Loch and Dal, because most of these big areas with no rocks have been destroyed by dredging. But yeah, there's definitely very distinct lines where the seagrass starts and stops. As you go out from more, it's kind of there's like patchy seagrass as it gets deeper, and then when it gets to a certain depth, the seagrass just completely stops, going in a line sort of northeast southwest, which you imagine would be the line the dredger would take, and then when it gets a bit deeper, it starts again. So yeah, I would strongly suspect that is historical dredging damage.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any going on now, and it wasn't being done extensive, and it was quite a small boat. But yeah, it was the divers were noticing, you know, as I say, it looked like a road had been stripped through. Yeah,
that's interesting. So why was it stopped? Was it like a community agreement, or what happened there?
He sold his boat.
Okay, it's honestly, it's a miracle that Lochendale hasn't been more destroyed by dredging. It's such a gem.
Well, the licenses were very limited on the size of net that you could drag behind, which kind of made it uneconomic unless you got the big boats that have got the big lines. It's not really worth it.
Right.
There are limits on licenses in the Lochendale. You know, it is half looked after.
I've not seen, having only been there, been to Islay 3 years. I've never seen a dredging or a trawler boat. I've only seen a couple of small creeling boats in there, which is good.
Yeah, it's been at least 10 years, Pete, since any's happened. At least 10 years.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Were you speaking, Bonnie? You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, just very quickly, I know most of you are aware, but just so James and Tom know, our Port Ellen meadow is right next door to the pier. And there's big developments planned and for planning for the pier. So I read up on the consultation paper for that, and it said that there was no seagrass meadow within 10 miles of Port Ellen Pier. And obviously, realising, having snorkeled it, that there's one several hundred metres away. So we fed that back through to consultation, and then one of the consultants got in touch with my husband, Dave, and then we sent them a very loose map. But Katie's got all the details of the consultancy, and you're going to hopefully follow that up, aren't you, with it? Maybe give them a proper map of this is what's happening. I think it's to do with dredging and where the spoil will go and making sure it doesn't impact on the meadow. But it's not something, I know it's a bit, people said to me, don't say anything because we want our pier. And I think it's not going to cancel the pier or anything like that. But I just think they need to be very mindful of where they're putting the spoil and where they're dredging.
Exactly that. You're just aiming to minimize the damage of these kind of developments.
Yeah.
And these things.
And the other issue that we had over the winter with that one was Port Ellen Maltings were pumping out loads of spent barley on into that area, and so the beach had hundreds and hundreds of ducks and geese all winter, which had never happened before, and the whole tide line was filled with barley, and we were concerned that would have an impact as well on the seagrass. So hopefully monitoring that going forward, now we can see if there's any changes.
Could be, could
Very
also
exciting.
not be. We've had actually ducks eating our restored meadows. But if they are well fed by barley, then they probably leave the seagrass alone because it's easier to reach. Who knows?
I think they'd never been there before. It was sort of like this phenomenon in the village that no one had seen before. Marianne and Emma, you saw it. It was just the number of wildflowers.
There's like 500 greylags or so at kind of the peak. So
yeah.
Well, as long as they eat the barley and then take the effluent away, it's a plus because they'll be roosting in the fields, and hopefully that's where they'll leave all of the nutrient.
Tom,
sorry, go
Tom,
for it, Pete.
you mentioned you might be able to provide some funding. I'm just wondering who do you represent? It's not like Sky or anyone massive like that.
No. I represent Islay. So Islay is one of the 6 carbon neutral islands. So each of the council zones that have islands within their remit they allocated 1 island from each council zone to be part of the Carbon Neutral Islands project. So it's aiming to get that designated island carbon neutral by 2040. And we do have access every now and then, if Scottish Government have a bit of spare money, to some money. And one of the things that has been looked at over the last year and a half is coastal mapping in some way, shape or form, mostly from a coastal erosion perspective. But we do need to look at blue carbon, and we just haven't had the opportunity to do it, the resource to do it. But if it's added on to something that's already happening, then there's possibility. I'm not promising you money here, Pete. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely not. But there might be a chance that we might be able to add some money on to something that you've got, if Scottish Government consider it worthwhile, and I manage to put a case together. But yeah, we are limited in what we can do. But who isn't, you know? But if we can help, help in any way, shape, or form, please ask. The worst they're going to say to me is no.
I mean, genuinely, one of the biggest helps we could get. I know it's like looking for hen's teeth on Islay, but I think we're all in agreement that I don't think we would camp again because the weather's so wild and there's nowhere to dry wetsuits or anything. So I mean, we really need accommodation, which is like the big expense. But you know, I'll just put that out there. Don't reply just now, but that's the main issue.
I've got a spare bed, but I live in a cowshed. So you know, this is my cowshed.
It's a very nice cowshed.
It's a beautiful cowshed. It's the most insulated cowshed you'll ever come across, and I love it. But it is a cowshed. It was advertised as a cottage. Cottage my arse. Cows used to live in this, not 40 years ago.
It definitely sounds better.
I'm very aware that we've gone over time, and it is quite late. And yeah, we've been here for quite a while. Esther's actually still in the office, and Pierre, you're still in the library, correct? Yeah. So,
yes, correct. But I'm going to stay for a little bit. I still have some data analysis to do, don't I?
Oh, that's going to be your world for the next wee while.
Exactly. Yeah.
All in the name of seagrass.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, for the good cause.
I think I can just round up by saying that I will send an email out to you all via the ticket tailor, asking for your emails and sending out links to things. And I think, yeah, that we'll be in contact with you all. This is the end.
Yes.
Beginning.
Thanks, Katie.
That was cheesy,
Oh,
wasn't
brilliant.
it?
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining us, and for everybody that helped us while we were on the island as well. Yeah, I hope you have a nice evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
guys. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.